Well, good morning, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here. For those of you not aware of this time last year I had made a decision to take a medical sabbatical. I had mold growing inside my body, and it's something that I needed to get fixed. And it was a difficult decision because the season was getting ready to start, but I made what I thought was a smart decision that would have a positive impact on my health for the next 20 years. When you make those types of decisions, there's always a cost. The cost for me was I had to give up the next few months. Emotionally, that was impossible. Intellectually, it was actually an easy decision to make. It would have been the same type of decision I would have recommended to my players, my coaches, anybody I cared about. So with that, I've been back full-time aggressively since the beginning of January. Having missed last season especially, I couldn't be more excited about getting started. So with that, why don't we get started with your questions? Yes.
Good morning, Coach.
Good morning.
In that time off, did you obviously said it was emotionally difficult to do it? Did you have an opportunity to actually learn anything about the team that you might not have seen coaching it through the last season?
I think there's always a value, actually. That's an interesting question. There's always a value to stepping away from something and observe it a little bit more from the outside. Sometimes when you're on the inside, you get a little too emotionally involved. You don't see the forest for the trees. So I don't know if I learned anything different than what I would have learned if I had been there, but I'm certainly aware of the mistakes that we had made and some of the things we could do going forward.
Coach, does everything you went through, do you almost look at this as a little bit different perspective now?
You mean like a new look on life? Well, remember, I wasn't dead. I wasn't dying. But I could have had a very serious breathing and maybe like problem 3 or 4 years from now. So I've taken care of that. I think I've always been, I grew up in a gang area. I had immigrant parents. 2 of my best friends got killed when I was in high school. One died of a drug overdose. One was killed by the police robbing a liquor store. My father sold bananas and apples in the Bronx. I feel so incredibly blessed to have had 2 careers, both of which I really love and I'm really pretty good at. So I've never taken that for granted. So for me, getting ready to start this season it's the same perspective. I'm honored and privileged and humbled to be in the position I am. And then, with that, though, comes very, very real responsibility. It's not like a new look on life for me. It's the way I kind of look at things.
Were you able to be involved with the team at all, or was it a clean break for you?
No, I wasn't involved with the team. They all the coaches had total autonomy to do whatever they wanted with football, as long as they didn't change our competitive advantage, which are our processes and the way we actually do philosophy, the way we do things. On Sundays, I would ask the position coaches and the coordinators just to text me and tell me your thoughts about how your guys did, and if I had some sort of reaction to that, I gave it to them. The players actually asked me to come in and talk to them a couple different times about things that had nothing to do with football. In fact, the 2 things they wanted me to talk about, remember last year they had the issues going on in Charlottesville. My guys wanted my perspective on what was going on in Charlottesville. And the other one was, if you remember, Kim Jong-un in North Korea had shot a missile over Japan. My guys were concerned about nuclear crisis. Now, I don't know how many teams in the country are going to ask the coach to come and talk about those things, but my players asked me to come and talk about that. I did both of those. After 7 games, I came in and kind of summarized where I thought we were as far as the season itself goes, but I wasn't involved.
Back here.
Yes.
What's something about your program that maybe people don't know about that they should?
I think there are 2 things that Coast Carolina does that nobody else in the nation does. The first is we don't have any rules. Literally, there are no rules. We have a standard. We call it "Bam, be a man." Now, it's not a tough macho guy. I raise my girls on that standard, but I have all male, so therefore, be a man kind of work. And what that means is a real man, a real woman, a real leader stands on their own 2 feet. They take responsibility for themselves. They always treat others with dignity and respect, and you're going to live with the consequences of your actions. Many of us, especially as we get players that have been high school stars, they tend to have a subconscious sense of entitlement. Now, no rules, but that's the standard. So when you come to our place, that's what we build the program on. It's also the way it was also my philosophy my first time around as a coach. My philosophy in the business world, both at Merrill Lynch and Ameritrade, is the standard we have. So everything we build our program around. That's number 1. Number 2, every coach in the nation realizes that part of our job is to lay a foundation upon which we're going to build. Our guys are going to build their lives later on. Now, we got 9, not counting this year, because we don't know what's going to happen. So last year, we had 9 guys playing professional football. 9. We also had 41 guys that were doing graduate work while they're playing for us. There's not a program in the nation that can say anything that comes close to that. So if you're good enough to get to the league, we'll get you to the league. But it's still about laying a foundation upon which you're going to live your life later. Now, what do we do as coaches? that reinforce that other than say that. Everybody's got help and support on campus. What we do that nobody in the nation does, we give up 30 minutes of practice a week. I'm going to repeat that. We give up 30 minutes of practice every week. We have a team meeting. Most of the time I run it, but not always. And we talk about stuff that's got literally nothing to do with football. We'll talk about terrorism. We'll talk about political elections. This is something I'm very proud of. 116 years of college football. The only program in the history of college football whose entire team voted last November 2016 for the President of the United States was Coastal Carolina. These are the types of things that we do that are unique and have a positive impact on our guys when they're here. But that's also the principles that would separate us from others with regard to recruiting.
Coach, just wanted your thoughts on an early season matchup against the Raging Cajuns. What do you think about traveling to play against them in September?
Well, we're excited. It's going to be my first trip there. When I was actually on the staff in Nebraska, we played them. So I've got a lot of respect for the coaching staff and what they do and what they have done and what they're going to do. And we know that's going to be a challenge for us. One of the biggest competitive disadvantage we're going to have this year, we're only going to have 70 scholarships. So everybody we play has 15 scholarships more than we do. That's going to have a significant impact on our depth and our special teams. But we got to be able to handle that as coaches. But I'm excited. I'm excited to go there and be there and to compete in that game.
Coach, you touched on it a little bit. When so many programs are trying to steer away from politics and leave that out of the game, why are you turning into that? Why are you embracing that so much?
Everybody acts like football is like life. Football is not like life. Football is a game. That's an important game, and we don't win, I'm going to get fired. But it's a game. It's a game. At the end of the day, there are so many things going on in the world. It's not just a matter of politics, but there are so many things going on that I would want my children to know. I want my players to know. And if I feel so strongly like that, why wouldn't I spend real time making sure our guys know that? So, biggest single threat in the globe today is terrorism. We have to live in the greatest country in the world. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people with unlimited funding will not hesitate to give up their lives because they would want to kill us because they think what we do is evil. You don't think that's something that your football players should absolutely know? My guys know what ISIS stands for. I bet you 90%, forget student athletes, I bet you 90% of the students in the nation don't know what ISIS stands for. You protect ourselves through the military. Average age of our guys is 20 years old. There are plenty of people 20 years old putting their lives on the line so we can play football, so we can live in freedom. With those freedoms come responsibility. You go right back to BAM. If that's so critical, you all can only pray that our political and military leaders have the guts to do what they believe is the right thing, even if they're not going to get reelected, even if they're not going to get promoted. Well, what role do we have in that? Oh, we have no say. We do have a say. I almost said something there. We do have a say. We live in a democracy. We've got the right to vote. It's not a matter of being political. It's understanding what's going on in the world that matters, that's going to have an impact on your life and your family's life down the road. So it's not, by the way, it's not just about football. It's not just about science class. It's not just about math class. It's not just about a language class. It's about what's going on in the world that's going to have a major impact on you and your family down the road. It's our job, especially with my background, I believe it's our job to be able to make sure our guys understand that. That's why we do that. Thank you.
Any more questions for Coach?
You mentioned the staff had full autonomy last season. What was some of the biggest transitions coming back into that and taking some responsibility back?
I think we've always taken tremendous pride. It's kind of part of our brand. We don't make a lot of mistakes. We normally don't hurt ourselves. We normally, like previous 3 years, probably special teams won 10 games. Last year, special teams probably lost 3 games. We're usually one of the best teams in the country for fewest penalties. Last year, one of the teams in the country for most penalties. We've always been a decent tackling team. Last year, we had like a gazillion missed tackles. It's focusing on why you're making a mistake. Making mistakes and solving your problem is not unique to football. And a lot of things that go on in football programs are not unique to football. Recruiting, other than evaluating the players, got nothing to do with football. It's about marketing, it's about sales, it's about logistics, it's about processes. Most skill sets for those things are far better recognized outside of football, and we can learn from that. Same thing in terms of understanding how you fix a problem. NASA has to go through, our space program has to go through 1,350,000 steps that they have to get everyone right. They got to be perfect to get a rocket launch with somebody in it so it doesn't blow up. 1,350,000 that they got to get right. Every coach in the country says when you lose a game, the biggest reason for losing a game is because you make mistakes. We got 11 guys that got to get it right for 5 or 6 seconds. Learning how to fix mistakes is not unique to football. In fact, there are ways to be able to learn those and go through the processes that are frankly more evident outside of football. So they're the things at least that we do and we try to look at that are totally different than maybe what other programs do. Yeah, anything tough for me? Any tough questions?
Coach, do you, after letting your staff kind of run things themselves last year, do you have more faith in them this year? Are they able to kind of handle things a little more than maybe they were a couple years ago?
I've always had faith in them. I was a little disappointed with what happened last year, but what happened last year is over with. I'm not concerned about that at all. I am a world-class delegator. So the most important thing I've got to do is hire the right people. And if I don't have the right people, then I got to make a tough decision on them. But when I bring you in, it's with the understanding that we've got that other program we call, we'll give up practice, it's called LAF, Life After Football and BAM. You got to buy into BAM, you got to buy into LAF, and you got to recognize we are going to do things differently than you've probably done them before in your football career. But as long as you buy into that, that's all I care about. That is your job to get your stuff done as best you can. And then wherever I see maybe you're kind of going down the wrong path, I'll do what I can to be able to help and contribute that. But if I have the wrong guys as coaches, then I got to make a tough decision. I have the right guys as coaches, and I have total confidence that they're going to do the right thing. Or work as hard as they can to make the best decisions they can. And at the end of the day, it's about how they affect their players anyway. Anybody else?
Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. You got a new defensive coordinator. We gave up 34 points a game last year. Where do you hope to improve on that?
Okay, the question I was asked, but talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. Last year we gave up 34 points a game. We got a new defensive coordinator. The new defensive coordinator is Marvin Sanders. I worked with him in Nebraska. He and I have worked together for 3 years. Frankly, I think I'm honored to be able to have him as defensive coordinator and Jamie Chadwell as my offensive coordinator and associate head coach. Marvin is a bright guy. He knows defense. His background is in the secondary. I like defensive coordinators that understand the back end going forward rather than, frankly, the front end going backward, but that part's irrelevant. He understands teaching. He understands in coaching, it is not about coaches are charismatic. They do a good job at teaching. It's got nothing to do with teaching. It's what your players learn. There are 3 ways we all learn: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So all of our guys take that test. So every one of our staff, every one of our players take the test so we know how they learn. Marvin understands that. So if he's working with one of the guys in the secondary and he's looking at film and he's talking about what's going on in the film, but one of his guys is a kinesthetic learner, he learns by touching, feeling, doing. The question the guy should ask, the player should ask, Coach, do me a favor, go over that again, but instead of showing me on film and talking me through it, allow me to take the steps, show me to take the steps. Marvin brings those types of things. He understands how to handle problems. He understands it's not about teaching, it's about learning. And he's a great role model, I think, to the staff, and I think he's a great role model for our players. Yes?
Coach, you lose a lot of experience going into this season as well, and since it is sort of restarting with you as a head coach, realistically, what are your goals for this season and for the team? It's a tough division. Do you expect to have a chance to win it? And if so, I mean, what's your basis for it?
I know this sounds a little bit hokey, but the reality is this is what I've said every year that I've coached. There's not goals per se. The goal is how do we maximize as a staff. We can't control necessarily we're going to win a game because we can't control the other team. But what we can control is whether or not we're able to maximize our potential. We are obsessed and fanatical about that and the elimination of mistakes. So if we do that, I would expect us to be able to do relatively well during the span of the season. So the focus is on whether or not we're maximizing our potential and achieving that. It's not about whether you can win a game and not have lived up to your potential. And you can lose a game and have done a job that nobody else in the country could have done better than. That's what we're trying to achieve. And I would expect us, even though we have the 15 scholarship disadvantage, I'd still expect us to be competitive. Now, what's going to happen, I don't know. But I know we're going to be committed to the idea of maximizing your potential and flawless type of execution. And at the end of the day, our real mission is to put a team on the field that Coastal Carolina is proud of. So it's not just winning games. It's how you behave, how you handle yourself, all those things are part of that.
The commissioner was talking a lot about the financial growth of this conference with its new deal with ESPN, new championship game. How do you assess this conference and how it's grown?
I think the commissioner in the last 7 years, I believe he's been here 7 years, I think Commissioner Benson has done an incredible job. the whole idea that Sun Belt rising, being able to go to the next level. Last year we played 5 bowl games. We were 4-1. That's as good as anybody else in the country, I think. I think we had 5 teams want to go to a bowl game. It's something we're proud of. You look at where you just take a look at this, the size and the stature of the Sun Belt a few years ago with where it is to now. It has risen significantly. It's going to continue to rise. I'm proud that Coastal Carolina is part of the Sun Belt.
Every game is difficult. But as you look at your schedule for this season, what's going to be the toughest game for you in your second year, Coach?
I think an uneducated observer would take a look and say we open up against South Carolina. South Carolina might be, but the reality is that's not the way we think. And we've got some really, really good teams in our league that I think are going to be every bit as competitive as anybody else that we might play. But as I said before, when we're getting ready for a game, we cannot control who the other team is. We can learn what they do. We can understand mismatches. We can understand what we need to stop and what we need to attack and how we might be able to adjust our special teams accordingly. But the only thing we can do is try to maximize our potential and have flawless execution. So when we go into a game, I mean, we know if a player's good, we know if a team's good. The record will tell us that. But it's just not the way we think. You get away from your focus. You get away from your priorities when you spend too much time talking about that. So my answer is, I'm looking at the whole schedule to be pretty competitive. I know the league's going to be competitive. I know South Carolina's going to be competitive. I can't worry about any of that.